Welcome, everybody. We're just waiting to let people join our webinar, and then we're going to get started in just a few minutes as participants are joining.
I can't see how many people are here. Okay.
Yep, on the bottom.
Okay, now I can.
Yes, people are still joining, so we're going to give them a chance to get in here. You can start getting familiar with the settings. So we're going to use the Q&A for questions and not the chat if possible, because we have colleagues monitoring the Q&A, but I'll go over that in detail just a few minutes once we get started. Okay, so people are still coming up, but let's get started just to be mindful of the time, since we have a lot of questions and only an hour to cover it. So welcome to sensory processing and food. How are they connected? So my name is Dr. Marion Russell. I'm an occupational therapist here at No2, and I'm together here today with my colleague Kessy Frenzel, but she will introduce herself.
Yeah, a warmly welcome from my side too. My name is Kessy Frenzel. I'm also an occupational therapist with special training in autism and ADHD. And yeah, I'm very happy about that we have this webinar today. And yeah, hopefully you will get some information about the sensory processing and the eating disorders. And yeah, whenever you have further questions, please write us an email to help@notebook.com, because we had so many questions we are not able to answer all. So when your question is not here answered, please write us an email.
Absolutely. Great segue into what is No2. I just want to have a quick introduction in case this is the first time you heard from us and you're joining one of our webinars. So we are a nonprofit interdisciplinary therapy center specialized in working with children and adolescents who have difficulty eating. And we are specialized in tube weaning. We are physically located in Graz, Austria, but I would say health-based models, and we also welcome families to our on-site programs. And it's fun tonight because I am located in the US and Kessy is in Graz. So as you can see, it works. We are on two different sides of the continent. So good evening if you are in the States, and now if you are in Germany or Europe, and in the US, it'll be good afternoon. And if you're in Australia, I think it's in the middle of the night. So hopefully you'll see the recorded version. So our topic today is looking at sensory processing. And I just wanted to, as it was important to us, for you to know that we're not necessarily just focusing on sensory processing disorder, but how the senses and the processing of sensory input is related to food and mealtime. I think that's really important because we have a lot of questions about picky eaters, or how to introduce different foods, or my kid doesn't want to touch different foods. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the kid has a sensory processing disorder, but to create an awareness that the senses play an important part when we're looking at mealtime. So sensory processing, just to get us all on the same page, in a simple one sentence, is the ability to take information from internally and the external environment to organize it in your brain, and then use that information to respond to a given situation. So processing the sensory information, internal, external, and then respond. And one of our first questions actually is kind of the summary of our webinar is, how does this impact eating and drinking? So yeah, I can say, listen to our webinar and you will have the answer at the end. But I think we thought just give you a brief introduction of what senses we're talking about and how you might see that translate into eating and drinking, since the question was about eating and drinking. And Kessy, feel free to add anything if I forget anything. So, okay, perfect. So let's start with the visual, right? I mean, we all remember when you get a casserole served, beautiful ingredients, but you simply can't tell it apart. You have no idea what's in there. It's one big mash. And that can be quite overwhelming. They can differentiate color, size, shape, whatever's in there. For kids, difficult to differentiate and hard to eat. So some kids who are very sensitive to a visual stimuli, they might prefer beige food or white food or brown foods, or might choose a specific food-based packaging. So that could be one way that might be expressed. Tactile is quite interesting. Because we have all those nerve endings in our hands, right? So, and the sensation is then kind of really translated into the brain and transmitted. And kind of when you touch it and you feel it and you can't tolerate it in your hand, it's going to be really hard to tolerate it in your mouth. So children may squeeze, pinch, smear food to really experience the tactile properties. So they have to get dirty when they, feel it everywhere. So kids who are oversensitive or hypersensitive to that, they might gag or they might avoid textures altogether because they can't tolerate the input. The next one is smell. And I'm sure if I asked you to recall a smell related to food, you will think of something. Smell, or the olfactory system, is very closely linked with memories and emotions. And it requires lots of multiple experiences. Kids have to make those experiences. It takes time. So, and also don't forget, food lingers after a meal is cooked in the house. And it can be pleasant, but could also be an unpleasant experience and memory. So here you might see gagging, avoidance, and the preference for low odor drinks. Water, for example, might be one that you can think of. And hearing is the next one that I see a lot too, because sometimes kids tell me the food is really loud. So you see kids that are really, the crunching of a chip is just so much that it's hard to tolerate, how to negotiate. So they might prefer purees. Or if they're in a very overstimulating environment, that actually can reduce appetite. So it's all connected. And just now we're getting to taste, which you would think that that's like the major sense when it comes to eating. It actually isn't. So sense, taste, of course, it's multimodal, lots of different tastes. It's early on, it's in the womb, you get the first taste experience. And so here, strong connection between taste, smell, and memory. Children, for example, have a history of reflux, especially when they're tube fed, for example. They might refuse milk or formula because the taste or the smell might remind them of the vomiting experience. So that is a very, very powerful one. And the last two ones we want to point out that sometimes get forgotten is proprioception and vestibular, so the balance. So proprioception, kind of how to navigate the body through space. If you've ever wondered why the fork doesn't end up in your cheek, but you get it into your mouth. So it's the awareness, but it's also awareness where there's food in the mouth. I think Kessy and I see kids often, the food gets lost, right? They just don't know where it is. It's somewhere in there, but they're holding it forever or spit it back out. They don't know what to do with it, right? And you might see stuffing and there's just so much in there because they can feel it until it's so much. So, but the good thing is you can exercise that. You can change it. You can impact it, change the properties of food. And we're going to talk about that as we go on in our webinar today. Balance. And I know our physical therapist in the team, Eva, this is the thing. You got to have a stable base for your tongue to move, chew, and swallow. So make sure your kid is not flying in the chair, but has a really, really good support. So that was a quick overview of the senses and kind of how that might play out when it comes to eating and drinking. Before the next question, Kessy, do you want anything to add that I've left out that you make sure our participants know?
Yeah, maybe I want to catch up your last thing about the stable positions, because it's not only about the stable positions during the meal, during sitting in the high chair or at the lap of mommy or daddy. it's also about motor development, about moving
Exactly.
around,
Mm-hmm.
because often nobody knows that the motor development is really strong connected to the oral development. So whenever you are moving, also your tongue is moving, because therefore it is a precondition that the child is able to roll around, because otherwise also the tongue is not able to roll around in the mouth. So
Mm-hmm.
so the child is not able to is not able to move the food inside the mouth from one side to the others, and then also backward to finally to swallow. So that is a really important thing, and that's regarding, that's important to know before we answer all the questions we didn't know about all the diseases, issues, and limited, and about the general motor development. So in case of that, we can't answer every single question like maybe the parents expected, but we will do our best. So I think that was one important point. The tongue is moving when we are moving, and perception is always subjective. So
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
that's, I think, one important point too. And now I would start with the first question from my side. It was, my son rejects the food. I try to give him some taste and he turns his head, or he makes as he will throw out. How to help him to appreciate the taste food? The question for me is, what kind of food does he prefer? So that is the main point. So maybe only a special texture or only special kind of food, and that's missing information. But for me it sounds a little bit like you put too much pressure on him, because when he turns his head away, then for me it's clear that he's not willing to cooperate with you. So please try to come out of this strict situation, try to calm down, and maybe he's in an age where he only wants to do it by himself. Maybe he needs more autonomy. And the second question for me is, maybe he's not hungry. So what about your expectation? When we are sitting at the table, often the parents have the expectation, now we're sitting at the table, now we have mealtime, and now we have to eat. But what is when he isn't hungry at this time? So try to give him the possibility that he takes his food by himself. Maybe you give him some bowls with food, and maybe without the expectation that he's eating at the table. When it's important for you that he's joining the meal, then it's quite okay. But maybe without the pressure, you have to eat, or I will feed you now. So I think, hope that helps a little bit. But I think I know it's very hard to come out of this circle.
Definitely. And a lot of questions were around like, what can I do to help, to assist? And I think when I look at that question too, for me is behavior is communication. So he's communicating with you that whatever is happening is not what
way.
Exactly. That is not what he likes. And it might not be the taste that he likes, so
maybe the smell wasn't that good. Maybe the visual system told him, okay, that's not mine. Or he wants to do it by himself. Yeah, that's the question. And that's hard. In such a case, we would ask the parents to send us a video from the mealtime. So we would ask them, please send us a video about 2-3 minutes. How is the meal going? What you are doing? And then we can have a look at it, and maybe then it's easier to have an overview and to have an impact after.
Absolutely. Yeah, good point. And it's kind of similar to your question. Next question was that my daughter struggles to eat certain types of finger foods due to that texture, like a chocolate biscuit that melts on her fingers, watery fruit that makes her fingers sticky. She keeps asking to clean her hands to be able to have another bite. How do you desensitize? How do you desensitize? Kessy is smiling because that's my soapbox. Why do you need to desensitize? First of all, she's eating the foods. Okay. So, and she's requesting very appropriate way. Can I please clean my hands? So very appropriate, right? I think I would be like, okay, that's great. So I think often we get the idea like we need to desensitize to some extent. Yes, we have to give the child I always say exposure with control. They need to be in charge. Don't do anything to them, but let them experience it themselves. Let them be in charge of it. And use food. There are lots of programs out there that use non-food items that works for some kids, not for all. I tend to, and I think Kessy is, I think similar to myself, that we tend to use food as a way to experience, to desensitize. But I think in this situation here, I would respect her communication. And there are a lot of people who don't like sticky hands. So I think it's absolutely appropriate.
Yeah, I would add the question, what is the benefit when she would do it? So there's nothing she takes out of the situation for herself. Only the point, okay, my fingers are dirty and I have to wash it, or I want to wash. So that's why I ask, what is the benefit behind? I think that's once again more the expectations from the adults. So
yes, yeah, definitely. So next question, how to introduce foods to picky eaters. That could be a title of a webinar, right? We could probably fill a whole
2
series.
hours.
Yes, definitely.
Minimum.
2 series. Exactly. So that is a great question. Books have been written on that topic. We would start with like, what does the child already eat? Let's look at the sensory properties of the food. What are similarities? Depending on the age of the child, I would probably figure out, does the child have a language of food? Can the child express, oh, this is hard, soft, sour, sticky, kind of, and then move from there. There's a concept called food chaining, where you change one sensory property at a time, shape, temperature, or texture, and then move. But as a team, you would look together, kind of, what does the child bring? What are the properties and how to move from there? Don't change too much. Depending on the age of the child, have the child be an active participant. Hey, how about we'll try, we have like a roll with this type of spread, let's try a roll with a different kind of spread, but the roll is the same. So don't change the safe food, and please don't hide food in other foods. So don't add things because you think the child really needs to have it, and that's the way you introduce it. No, let the child know that what they're getting is what they're getting, and don't surprise them by changing the texture or by adding zucchini to their brownie. That's just my personal opinion. I know, Kessy, if you feel the same way about that, but maybe you don't. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, my internet connection is not the best.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Let's see. Yes, my child does not want to touch or feel real food, let alone eat it, where he's happy to lick anything else. And yesterday in our German webinar, Kessy had a wonderful answer to that question, because she talked about how kids use the tongue on those objects to create 3D images. And that's fascinating. So it's actually a part of a learning process. For me, the question would be, what's the age of the child? It could be very age appropriate way to explore and practice tongue movement, the proprioception, what can my tongue do? And sometimes for kids, that's just, they're smart. They know the expectation is not to eat it. So they take it in their mouth because they know you want them to eat the food. So they are smart. Don't underestimate your children or your clients if you work with kids. So to kind of make the connection then to real food, you could try some hard food that's not meant for eating, like we have, like in Germany, those beefies, which is kind of a sausage that you can use for dipping with other textures. And they have something hard in their hands and slowly kind of grate it to get to food items, but kind of find food items that are cold and hard as an object to transition.
the age is so important.
Mhm.
Information
Mhm.
we are missing in the most questions, because
Yes.
in the oral development, really, when the children are missing some steps in the oral development, they are able to catch them up later. So it would be possible that maybe they're starting with school, and then they start chewing at the pencils, at the rubbers, and what else, and the parents are asking, why does he do it now? Because he's so old, he's too old. And I said, okay, moment, please. Maybe he's catching up some steps he missed in the past. So it is very important to make it. Also, a behavior aspect could be the reason, or an overwhelming situation that we have to figure out. But often it is really a missed step is catched up later. So that's very interesting for me. I like it because I had a lot of children in therapy there. I have also a question I like a lot. How to do food play when children just don't want to be involved and keep leaving the table or the room. So playing is something without pressure and without any expectations. Sitting at the table and make the decision for your child. Now we are going to play with food. Doesn't work. It couldn't work. Playing is a natural behavior in the childhood and should come from the inner motivation and not why the adults want them to play now. So please reduce your expectations to a minimum and give your child the possibility to play in their way. They are playing in another way than we would do. When your child isn't willing to join your game offer, then he isn't interested enough. So that is my mind to that. So ask yourself, what is the goal behind the game, playing now with food? And what about the general attention of the child? Is he quickly distracted by something else? Or is it only a problem when you want him that he's playing with food in this situation? So there are a lot of informations already missing, but for me, it doesn't make sense to say now we are playing with food. So when he's not interested, then you didn't have a chance. So children are very stubborn in that. So we are playing a lot with children and food in the eating school, but that's without any pressure. They can touch whatever they want, they can play, they can taste, but there's nothing from us regarding you have to, or now it's time to. So yeah, I think you have to come to eating school, then we will show you how to play with food in a playful way.
And not at the table.
And not at the table. Yeah,
Yes, you'd be
that's
surprised.
also one point.
Yes.
So
But it's I think, Kessy, you're absolutely right. And we keep stressing the point when we talk about sensory processing and food is that the child needs to be in charge. You can't flood the kid with all the sensory impressions and then expect them to function.
yes.
I think that is just a lot. So yeah, but
and say, okay, now you have to sit there and now we do it. So it couldn't work because I don't know what about the body awareness of the child. Maybe he has a problem in his deeper perception, and maybe there is the main problem. Maybe he's interested in playing with food, but he isn't able to join because the motor development and the sensory perception are not working together like that, and he has to move to all the energy who stuck in to leave there, and therefore he has to move. So I think there are a lot of things we have to figure out there. So please write us an email. So let me see. I have another question. My daughter still tries to eat by mouth. She's on period foods and likes the taste of bananas. She reacts as if the food taste is terrible with any food she eats, which makes me believe it's a sensory issue with taste and texture. Can you explore ideas? Once again, how old is your daughter? That is a very important point. Maybe the period food is quite fine at this stage of age. So maybe she's so small that the pure things are already quite fine. And the banana has a really special taste. So one of us, I love them. And like me, I can't eat it. I can't drink anything when I smell there's banana inside. So when she likes it, then you can try to experiment with this flavor. So add some vanilla yogurt to banana yogurt, or smash a banana to a vanilla yogurt. Make some milkshakes with banana or some ice cream. Catch up what she is able to do and what she likes, and don't make any fight there. You can also add slowly, step by step, something new, but that's regarding on the child. So that's very hard to make now.
A recommendation.
That's really hard. And beside an issue from the sensory perception, it could also be that there's a behavioral component. So maybe she learned in the past that when she refuses the food you're offering her, that you give her then her favorite food. So we have to figure out it. That's quite hard to make any recommendations, as you already said. Bananas, but it's a special taste.
Yes, and I was also wondering, because the first sentence says my daughter still tries to eat by mouth. Still meaning, is she on a tube and you're feeding her that on the side? And so that's also in tube. We're going to talk about a little bit later about tube-fed children or recently weaned children and their sensory perception when it comes on food. And that's something that will take a lot more time, because they have to kind of really, as Kessy said, to make up that time and catch up. I think that's really important too. Okay. Yes, people don't give us ages. So whenever you come to the next webinars, it would be extremely helpful if we have ages and give you more direct answers.
It would be a precondition to join us.
I know. But feel free to email us if you really want your age child and an answer for that. So we can do that. So the next question is, our daughter has an oral aversion. So oral aversion here really nothing goes into the mouth. It's very sensitive, I assume. He has a tracheostomy, so it has a trach, and asking for some fun ways to engage her in sensory or oral play. Any suggestions for foods to lick to expose her to different tastes without forcing her to put it directly in her mouth? Licking is great, as you said already, so then she is in charge. Forcing, not an option. So she really, really has to be in charge. So here is it. First of all, what's the goal? Is the goal for her to accept food eventually? What behaviors is she showing that makes you think of an oral aversion? Kind of what is the long-term goal here in that sense? So I would do food play outside of mealtime. Take it away from the table. Really don't make it about eating. You can freeze all kinds of food, and it's fun to lick, and just put like a little popsicle stick in the top. Could be from soups to purees to anything you want. Licking things in front of the mirror is fun because they get to see themselves. She can feed you or whoever is in family members, feed the dog, and she can observe you play with food. So it's also fun to have parents be an active participant in food play. That sometimes when we're at the eating school can be quite difficult when the parents don't want to get their hands dirty, sticky, but the children are expected to do all those things and eat foods they don't know and can't tolerate in their hands. So keep that in mind as we are talking here today. Where are you on the sensory spectrum? So again, here, those would be kind of my ideas. And then again, have it guided, have her be in charge. I think that is here the overall message that I would be, driving home in that regard. And my next question was, my son has started biting pieces of food, but always spits them out immediately. How do I help him to progress from chewing to swallowing? It's actually quite a lot of steps from chewing to swallowing. That doesn't happen like one after the other. Again, we don't have the age of the child. So that's our question number one. Our physical therapist, Eva, would say, like, what is the gross motor development? Is the child even able to chew yet? What does the tongue do? Can it roll from side to side? Can it sit up by themselves from the supine position? Does it child need support, right? So the question is too, does the food, not just the sensory properties, but does the food match the oral motor skills? Yeah, maybe the schnitzel is not what they're able to eat quite yet. So, and then why does he spit it out? So those are all the questions, right?
I love
Does
it.
it, yeah, does it not match? And I always say spitting out is also a typical stage of eating development, because they need to figure out whether I can chew that stuff well enough to swallow it. So I say, look at what it looks like, what this child spits out. Is it well chewed? Is it just like barely licked, barely saliva got going and this thing came out? Has it been sitting there forever and is decomposed, So really look at that, and you can do a lot of assessment also just from looking at what is there, and make him comfortable with chewing. Start with easily dissolvable foods that kind of you put in your mouth and they kind of just disappear. So it's a process that you engage together with your child to move from chewing to swallowing, but it's a process, and you look stable base. That's where you start gross motor development, and then you look what the other kind of things fall into.
In one eating school, only one experience. In one eating school, we had a child fully tube fed and only drink a milk bottle. And then the child started to be interested in solids. And the child started biting and then chewing a little bit and spitting out. And the mommy said, oh, why are you spitting it out? Because she was so in her expectation, okay, when you are now biting and chewing, then you have to swallow. And I said, congratulations, your child reached the next level in the oral development he missed in the past. And she looked at me, so what are you talking about? And I said, okay, spitting out, it doesn't look very beautiful. It is what it is, but it's a natural part and an important part of the oral development, because everything I can put in my mouth and everything I am able to spit out, that means I have to control about it. And that's the security I need. Okay, when I'm able to control the food, then maybe one time I am there to swallow it. So I said, congratulations. Then they laughed, and I left the table and enjoyed how the parents, after our short small talk, looked at the child. It was quite a big difference, because then they had the feeling, okay, there's something special. It is very important part and a next level coming to eating. And so there was a change, not only in the child, there was a bigger change in the mind of the parents. So it was
parents,
that's
a beautiful, and you touched on so many important pieces. One is too is like having, and that's like the beauty of no tube, is that we really look at the whole eating is a family unit. It's not just the child, it's whoever is part of that mealtime, whoever's part of the experience. If you see the little steps, and if you think about it, the child, I always say the hardest thing is to get the food in the mouth.
Yes.
Once it's in there, we can work with it. We can work with it, because this is like, okay, it's in there, perfect. And the child has learned so much about the sensory properties of the food already by the way it's in the mouth. So we got the taste, we got the vision, we got probably the hearing, proprioception, how does it feel? And maybe it's just not ready. And I always say, like, if the child can spit things out, we're golden. We can work with that. So the little steps, and I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, and that's also we don't only treat the children. Often we treat more the parents about the background information they couldn't have. So nobody told them why it is important and what are important steps and why does my child react like that. So it's a treatment for the whole family, and we accompany them from the beginning till the end. And I think that that makes the change, and that makes the no tube spirit. So it's not only the child is coming to me into a therapy room and we are making a therapy now for 1 hour. It's a guidance through their life, through their all daily life, and yeah, to have an impact and all. So I think that's yeah, one thing I love there, working there.
Yes, I agree.
So, and before I talking more about our great eating school, I have the next question. So,
Yes.
I love the eating schools. So how can parents introduce different brands of the same food successfully? It depends on every single child. Sensory is always subjective, and the child must always be seen in his whole being. So I can't have this one answer. Which stage does the child reach already in their motor development? Again, you see, that's always a repeatment. Yeah. What about the motor development? Are there any issues, diseases, limitations, special needs? That's really important information I need to answer this. And the most important question regarding the sensory perception. So there is no one-way ticket to a successful eating behavior. There are so many details to consider. And yes, sometimes it's also all about try and error. So also in the eating school, we don't have this one-way ticket. So this child has this disorder, this child loves this food, so you are doing that and you are doing that. So that doesn't work. So we have to be on site, very sensitive, and as I already mentioned, also a guidance for the parents, because to change something means always insecurity. So I'm insecure what they're happening. They're changing our life, but is it good? And how could it work? Does it work successfully? And that is really, yeah. So we also try, and sometimes it doesn't work. Then we have to find another way. And sometimes we are successfully, and then we are happy all together.
Yes. And I just want to add that the parents too, like in terms of the successfully new brands of food, the idea of that they have to have that cookie to travel. And if they don't have that cookie anymore, my child will stop eating. We've worked with those families, and this is a real burden on the family. So we suggest early on, try to diversify, try to see what is it about that cookie that makes it so special. What is it about? Is it the taste? Is it the shape? Is that if it's a round cookie, get another round cookie, so that is, it's easier when I come to the eating school, we can say like, well, in Austria, we only have those cookies, life happens. Yeah. If you can, so the idea of really kind of figuring what is the sensory property. And sometimes I say to parents, just eat the food yourself and figure out how does it feel, like what is it about this cookie, so the taste, texture, temperature, or whatever it may be, could be whatever, chicken nugget or something, so kind of explore it yourself as a parent, as a caregiver, a little bit like a scientist, to see with the child, ideally, that would be great, to give them a language. And then from there, you have an easier time to move beyond that being on that box. And for some kids, that box is safety. They know what comes, what the expectation is. It's the kind of the safety net. And maybe you try to pair it with something new. Maybe leave the box the same, but you're going to have, instead of chicken nuggets with mashed potatoes, you have chicken nuggets with a baked potato. So you change the side, but let them have the chicken nuggets. But then at least they also have a baked potato. So
that's we always said, change only one thing. So not too much, because that could be very overwhelming for the children. And yeah, when I'm thinking to myself, when they're changing too much in my environment, then I also get insecure, and I have the feeling, okay, there's something not right. So, and we want our children that they feel like they're in a new home. It's like a second home. So therefore we didn't have this hospital flair like in hospitals or clinics, so which they already knew from their past. So there's more, it's a big flat and we are all together, we're joining the meals together. And yeah, I think that's something special. So that is not a treatment now we have the treatment, now I have the doctor and the therapist, so it's more like a big family. So once again, eating school. Then I have another question: sensory processing and autism. So I can also have own webinar about this, because this is so much. I could tell you so many informations to involve for eating problems and autism. There are two spectrums, very that's really hard to figure out. Now some important information for you to make a short summary, to give you a short overview. I try it, but for special questions, please let me know. help@notebook.com, and yeah, I will get this email. So it is common for autistic people to have a typical eating behavior. More than a half with autism are affected having issues with food or eating. They may have a highly selective eating requirement or be particularly sensitive to special textures, to the look, to the smell, or the sound of food. So I think maybe when you're joining the webinar from the beginning, you know it from Marion. She told you what sense are including. And for autism, for people with autism, it's quite harder than for neurotypical people. So they often have difficulties to join social activities. So, but eating, to have a meal, is a kind of social activity. Sitting there together with other people could be quite hard, because there are so many noises. Maybe they don't want to eat in this situation because they are not able. There are so many informations out of their environment they have to figure out. They have to work with it in their inner. So it isn't possible to eat there in this situation. And also waiting for food, it could be a problem, because maybe they have problems with attention. So waiting for something, or waiting for that the other people at the table are ready with eating, because our society says, okay, we are sitting here at the desk till everyone is ready, till everyone finished his food. So that is not really helpful for them, because that's quite more hard. And they also have oral problems, difficulties with chewing and swallowing, maybe gastrointestinal problems, which making eating not a non-pleasurable, oh my God, experience. And because they have problems to figure out important informations. And yeah, also they need a lot of security in their environment. They love routines. They love when something is repeating. So that's also a point in the eating. They like food, repeat, because they are able to manage them. And everything new needs, okay, I don't know, that I'm insecure. I don't know how to handle this. I am able to handle this, and to not come in this situation where they get overwhelmed and maybe they get a breakdown. They refuses to come into this situation and prefers the food which is safe. So there was a special question, how to get my autistic 4-year-old son to start eating textured food. He only eats yogurt from the cup containers. He gags when we try to feed him anything textured. That's one point. So when your son is 4 years old, I would prefer at first that maybe he eats by his own. Maybe he can do it. Maybe his motor skills are good enough that he's able to do it. Therefore, he also needs some coordination. That's I think that's clear. But to feed someone else is it's something very personally, I think. So I don't know if you ever try to feed your husband or your wife. It's a really special thing, and maybe you have to change this situation at first, that he gets his meal and that he can eat by himself. The best precondition you can have is to start slowly, step by step, to offer him his yogurt, not in the cups, but separate in a bowl, so that you're coming out from his routine that he always needs this cup where the yogurt is in. So because when you have a bowl, then you have the possibility to change maybe something, sometimes in time, slowly, step by step, also the taste. But that that depends on every single child and on the sensory perception to them, and how is his reaction to when something's changed. So any kind of pieces can cause him to gag. When he's very sensitive in his oral sensory perception, then it's quite okay. Then when he's not eating pieces at this stage, maybe anytime he's interested in solids, but give him the chance to make in his own experiences without pressure, and you can contact us whenever you need help for this, because I think that's something special. But stay there in this texture. Don't feed him with textured food, because he will lose the trust in you, I think. Maybe then he refuses any time to eat anything. So there you have to be very sensitive. What do you want to add something, Marion?
No, I think it's really important. I think you said it, the idea of having safe foods and leave that safe food, the safe food. And I think especially kids with autism, and don't surprise them. So I think that's just really, it has to be predictable, become part of the routine. And it's definitely a process that will take time. But we have worked with at NoTube with quite a few kids on the autism spectrum. So feel free to send us an email with some specific questions, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about that. Yeah.
Maybe it sounds a bit hard that I said maybe you put the yogurt in a separate bowl, but what is the reason behind, or my idea behind this? Not to put this yogurt now in front of him into the bowl. That's not working. So, but you can take a new bowl beside the yogurt at the beginning, so that he is getting used to it, that is there and that is always in his view, and that he gets to secure nothing that has happened. And one time you take one spoon out of the yogurt into the bowl, and that's step by step. That is what I meant. So don't say, okay, today Kessy said you don't get your yogurt in your cups. Now you use a separate bowl. Don't do it.
Only comes in bowls.
It's really hard work. That's really hard work. Really. And also a question from a mommy. She wrote me, my daughter is 5 years old, autistic, and she's only drinking milk. She's not taking any solid food. My question will be, what can I do to make her eat solid food? So that is also a very long and hard way, because at the moment your daughter chooses the milk as her saved food. So that's okay. Yes, she's 5 years old, and our expectation would be that she eats solid, some schnitzel, some, I don't know, vegetables and what else. But my priority wouldn't be the next step to eat solids. Maybe you can slowly thickening liquids slowly, so that you can come closer to the pureed food. In fact, there are also children who eat only liquid food. So it could be, and we also have children feed themselves only by liquids. So then we have to find a way, maybe with special nutritive drinks. Oh, there was a lot of this. So that, because you have to make sure that she gets all nutrition she needs to grow up and to stabilize and gaining weight. Yeah, but when you have their special question, please let us know. And yeah, maybe there's also very important that you are working close to your pediatrician, because when she's only drinking a milk, then I think could be difficult for the nutrition to get all what she needs. So yeah, I think, 10 minutes left, Marion.
I know the questions are going.
So
Let's switch over to our last big section of questions. We're not going to get through all of them. So a lot of questions came in from parents of children, they're on feeding tubes or are recently weaned, and kind of the connection of sensory processing and being on a feeding tube or recently weaned. It's complicated because kids really have to catch up. There's a lot of experiences, sensory experiences they have to gain because they didn't have the opportunity to, or they had lots of stuff happening to their mouths. Just think about having like the NG tube. I have an oxygen tubing, and that alone is already like aggravating. So, but if you have it in the back of your throat and you have to swallow and learn all of those things, that's going to take time. It can trigger a gag, it can trigger an aversive response. So it's really taking it slowly. And I got a few questions from parents who said, my son is G-tube free, which is fantastic, congratulations, but only eats purees and the sole source of nutrition, formula. We've done speech and all other therapies, intensive feeding program in the local hospital. What else can I do? I've exhausted all my resources. Get in touch with us. We might have some additional information, but however, that the goal after tube weaning is to maintain weight and then slowly gain. It is not to move immediately, to skip from purees to solids. So it's really, they have to also take those gradual steps of eating development. Think of how long we give typical children to develop. So really giving them the time to develop those skills to catch up and match the food with the oral motor skills. If it's new food, let them explore it with their hands. One thing we do here at NoTube is a play picnic. That might be a great resource. You can look at our website. It's also a therapeutic intervention and part of the eating school. But when we work with our families that are weaning their children off their feeding tubes with us, sensory processing is really, really important. And I often get the question too, is like, how do you include the sensory processing piece when you work in a telehealth model? So we have the net coaching model for kids on feeding tubes, and we have videos, we guide them. There's going to be sensory play, food play, that all will happen and needs to happen. We always say that the kid needs to meet the food first before they can eat it. And that might take as long as it takes. And they have to be in control, in charge of their sensory experience and how they move along. So an important piece, and you can't take it out of the equation. So it's part of tube weaning, is to address the sensory system and have the child catch up and make those experiences that they may or may not have missed. Anything to add, Kessy?
No, nothing. No, was perfectly. So maybe one question also about tube feeding. I had one, how to get my child back to oral eating, as he had a tube in and has had oral aversions from vomiting too much, because vomiting is often a big topic. So often children with a tube have problems with vomiting. Yeah, please discuss it in a free evaluation with us, because we have the possibility to help your child. The earlier we started, the easier is the treatment and the better is the outcome for everyone. So children who are fully tube fed are not hungry at all. So they there is no inner motivation to eat orally. They also are not able to feeling hunger because they were fed by a schedule, and they are not able to increase this feeling of being hunger. So they are mostly full, that all the time, all day long, and that's not natural. And there we have to act very fast. And I think, I'm sure that we can help you. It doesn't matter. We can have a net coaching where we where we guide you through this process, or you can come to Graz. So that's your decision.
Yes. And it's always important. I think another question that we had, and I'm just going to mention it since we only have 6 minutes left, was regarding tube dependency. And so how can we overcome tube dependency in children with sensory issues? And tube dependency, we at No Tube, we don't see it as just the child. So the entire caregiving unit is tube dependent. So they are part of the treatment. So you have to include them. And as I said, sensory issues are part of it. So we invite caregivers, family members, whoever it may be, to be part of that journey, to have it like that sensory exploration, to get to know the child from a very different perspective, because they might have never seen a kid eat. And so trying to figure out what is it that the child likes can be a scary, but a very rewarding process. So we are here to help you, to give you the tools, to give you the sensory experiences the child needs to introduce food back into their lives and to match it to their comfort level. I think that is really, really important. And I cannot stress it enough that the child needs to be in charge. I think that's kind of the overall message for today. Yeah. Make sure you write down help@notube.com for all your questions. And be sure to remember that the child needs to be in charge. They can't be forced to experience a sensory experience that needs to come from them. Give them time, let them be the guide, and follow and support. I think that is really, really important. And you will get there. And we are here to help. You know now where to find us. And also reach out and look at our website, notube.com, for more information. There are free ebooks for you to download to get some more tips and tricks as well.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Book a free evaluation with me or with my colleague Eva or with my colleague Valerie. We are happy to help you, and we will give you all special information about our treatment programs. So don't hesitate, write us, and we're happy to getting soon and help you.
Yes. Absolutely. So thank you for joining us today, for wherever you were, and hopefully you'll take a different look at your meal when you eat the next time.
And your child.
And your child, exactly. And in German we say guten Appetit, bon appetit, whatever it might be in your language. And know where to find us, and we will be here to guide you. So have a wonderful rest of your day. And this will conclude our webinar.
Thank you so much, and see you.